class. Today we are going to talk about embracing digital transformation and how to budget for these initiatives. We wanted to kick things off with a little throwback video. This is a clip from a 60 Minutes piece done on Amazon back in 1999.
And Wall Street isn't concerned that Amazon has never made a profit, not a dime. In fact, it lost $125 million last year. The company says it's investing for the future. Skeptics say it would have to sell every book being sold in the world today to justify its stock price. I think my generation grew up with Sears.
And Amazon is worth 20% more than Sears is worth in market capitalization.
How do you view that phenomenon that Amazon today is worth more than Sears?
Investors are focused on the future. Amazon has growth potential that Sears doesn't.
A couple of geeks who sketched out some software could destroy Sears Roebuck.
That's the beauty of technology and the microprocessor. We've never seen anything like it.
I think we all know how this story has played out almost 20 years later now. As you can see, Amazon's e-commerce market share compared to its 9 closest competitors on the screen. Amazon listened to market indicators and understood consumer engagement in the buying process was changing, while more traditional retailers at the time maintained the status quo. Now, obviously, no one on this call today is Amazon, but today we're going to talk about some key principles that all organizations can follow for transformation success, focusing specifically on our nonprofit clients.
So now to why we're here today. And that's because through our work with associations, we found that mission-based organizations are usually so focused on fulfilling their mission that they fall behind the digital expectations of their consumer. So to introduce ourselves, my name is Jake Toohey, and I'm a senior digital consultant with Adage. My primary focus is our work with healthcare associations.
And I am Mike Kovac, also a senior digital consultant with a focus on working with our trade association clients.
So our agenda for today's webinar is to first tell you a little bit about who we are, and then we will define digital transformation and talk about why it's so important. We'll review today's users and their expectations before getting into the competition that you're facing, and then we'll talk about how you can get started and how to budget before finally getting into different scales of digital transformation with a couple of quick case studies. So let's start by defining digital transformation. Digital transformation transitions an organization from the, quote, way we've always done it to focusing on the ever-changing demands of consumer expectations in the digital world. And digital transformation and the importance of it are because of rapid technological advances that have led to real business world changes. And this has led to what we call the consumer evolution. So now we have to be laser focused on this digital consumer. And how we do that under the lens of digital transformation is to make things simple, enjoyable, and engaging for our users.
So think about some of the tech items that people owned 20 years ago. Walkman, boombox, VCRs, camcorders. Today, people walk around with all this in our pockets on our phones.
And when we think about the evolution of user experience, I like to look at it in terms of video games, just so we can see how things have changed so much in such a short amount of time. So remember Pong? It was as cutting edge as it gets when it was released in 1972. Just a joystick, one button, it's two-dimensional. But then in 1985, the original Nintendo was released, and it came with Super Mario Brothers. It was still 2D, but it's full color. It was a linear experience, but you could actually control your player. And then we jump ahead to N64 in 1996. It's a full 3D experience, and rather than only moving up and down on a screen, you're moving in different directions. There were buttons and a joystick so that you could control your player. And then we see something like Xbox One released in 2013. It's fully immersive, 3D space again, but this is starting to become photorealistic, where the grass looks like grass, the sky looks like sky. You can actually see the sweat on players' faces. And not only that, you can now have this exact same experience on your phone, and you can play with anyone around the world right from your mobile device. And now you see things like virtual reality, and this example is the Oculus Rift. And it's funny, it looks like the video of a player in a game, but that's actually a guy playing the game. So to him, he's literally inside of the game. And finally, you probably remember the Pokemon phenomenon from a few years ago. This experience is not that you're inside of the game, but now the whole world is the game. And we're talking about massive multiplayer. And the accelerating trajectory is just crazy. So in terms of digital transformation, the trajectory of something like video games should show you that if you're not keeping up with these kinds of expectations, you're at risk of being left behind.
So the need for digital transformation is directly tied to the changes that Jake was talking about here in consumer expectations. So think about how people used to buy shoes or TVs, even home improvement items. For some people, going to the store used to be an all-day outing, nice little Saturday planned for them. But now you can research and make an informed purchase all from the comfort of your couch. Let's take a look at how this ties into an Adage client example. So here's a quote from an American Academy of Pediatrics member that we heard during one of the phases of our project with them. So people used to join the AAP because that's what you do when you become a pediatrician. New members join because they want to get value from the organization. And this type of thinking is consistent with the study that you see here done on members and why they joined their respective nonprofit. A lot of nonprofits we speak to seem to have a bit of a disconnect as to why people join or donate. But as you can see here, the study broken down by age demographic, older generations joined because they felt a professional obligation to do so, while younger generations are joining for the professional benefits that they will receive. Now, as we look to the future, we need to find ways to evolve our business to better align with these changing consumer expectations.
So before we go too far, we want to point out that oftentimes digital transformation is confused with digital strategy. And it's not just digital strategy. So digital strategy focuses on digital functionality, tools, assets like search, email marketing, social, content marketing, optimization, and branding. So what's the difference between digital strategy and digital transformation? And that's that digital transformation focuses on and requires us to understand our customers, improve their experience, change the culture of our organization, and a big part of that is improving our internal processes. We're talking about modifying our business model specifically for digital and using the data available to us to drive our decisions. So that's what we're talking about with digital transformation: strategy and culture, staff and customer engagement, process and innovation, technology, and data and analytics.
So let's talk about consumer expectations and competition today. Your website is one of the easiest access points for consumers to engage with your organization. So digital transformation for most is going to include your site. So when you think about your website, it's important to note that users spend most of their time on other websites. While you may not think of these companies as your direct competition, you're competing with them because they set the expectation for those who are coming to your site. So think about how many websites you visit on any given day. What kind are they? Why do these sites keep you coming back every day?
So why does all this matter, right? We have to understand that your website is your organization's most visible asset, and that your members will interact with the website more than any other association program. And most importantly, the experience that the user has on your site can be the difference between them joining or donating or not. If it's too hard for people to register or sign up, you will absolutely see a drop-off. And if there's too many steps to donate, users get frustrated and you won't get their donations. And you've probably experienced that with e-commerce experiences that you've had. Or if we don't make it easy for people to achieve their end goal, we're going to lose customers and money. And that leads me into competition that lots of associations and nonprofits are facing. And I like to talk about it as the concept of competing with free. So here are some examples. Doximity is a free social network for doctors. It's only been around for about 8 years. They already have 500,000 plus active members, which is more than twice the amount of the American Medical Association. And while it doesn't offer everything the AMA does, it provides a lot of the same things, including the ability to connect and stay connected with colleagues, classmates, and co-residents. It offers networking with colleagues and employers at hospitals. They offer CME credits and the ability to send HIPAA-secure documents from your mobile device. And then there's Teachers Pay Teachers. This is actually a for-profit marketplace for teachers to share resources and materials with 4 million active members. And it's teachers creating content that's only purchased by other teachers. So there are all kinds of resources that are out there, and they provide many of the same benefits as associations. It's educational materials, networking opportunities, and the theme is that they're all extremely easy to use, and they are only a couple of clicks away. So I talked earlier about understanding our customers and improving their experience, and this is how we can stay ahead of or keep up with all this competition. And I don't think there's a better example of that concept than Amazon, and it's because they live by that philosophy. So Mike talked earlier about how they have half of the market share of the top 10 e-commerce retailers in the country. And how do they do it? It's their customer obsession, not competitor obsession. And we need to give our customers, users, members, whomever, we need to give them exactly what they want and need. And if we do that, we don't have to worry so much about the competition. So let's look at a different sort of example that you've probably never thought of. You ask yourself, do you want to be Kodak or the New York Times? Kodak invented digital photography in 1975. Digital photography wasn't even really a thing until the early 2000s. And so Kodak was so far ahead on their intellectual property, but they failed to innovate, to listen to their customers. And they're very siloed. And they stopped even selling digital cameras, picture frames, those types of products in about 2012, shortly after filing for bankruptcy. Now the New York Times, they disrupted the newspaper industry, which is a legacy industry similar to associations. And they were the first big newspaper to put their content behind a paywall. And a lot of people thought that was crazy. It was controversial. But if you look at just a few of the newspapers that are gone because they didn't innovate, and there's literally a website called newspaperdeathwatch.com that tracks newspapers that have died off.
So building off what happened in the newspaper industry, let's take a look at the threat of complacency and the cost of doing nothing. So remembering back to our Amazon example, what was Amazon doing differently than everyone else here on the right side? Amazon has 14 leadership principles, as Jake mentioned before, this whole idea of customer obsession. Any project that Amazon starts, it's starting with the customer and then working backwards to the solution. The Steve Jobs quote from the 1997 Microsoft Developers Conference echoes the same line of thinking. You need to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. So while Kodak focused on technology and creating the first digital camera, they ultimately failed. The New York Times, however, has been able to alter their business model to fit how people consume news stories today, allowing them to remain relevant.
So ask yourself, what makes you special? Or why does your organization exist? And it's really about the mission and your consumers. And whether that's advocacy in Washington or continuing education credits, maybe it's fundraising or advancing the arts, it might be education, student enrollment, or alumni relations. But what we often find is that these mission-based organizations are so focused on fulfilling their mission that they fall behind the digital expectations of their consumers, like I talked about earlier. And this is because the mission gets disconnected from what the user wants and needs. So let's go back to what I talked about earlier. We need to make things simple, enjoyable, and engaging for our users. And so where do we start? With digital transformation, we need to start with strategy, culture, and employees. And we see this kind of thing a lot when we talk about employees and culture. Organizations usually are broken into different silos where they're all doing their own thing, they aren't communicating, sales isn't talking to membership, who isn't talking to advocacy, and so on. And a lot of times these departments operate different websites and web platforms that cause massive amounts of confusion to their members. And we've seen every department at an association use different email marketing platforms. So how do you think members like that, getting 10 emails a day from all different departments with different branding and messaging? It's a nightmare. So at some point, people just delete or ignore all your emails because they're so overloaded with information that they may or may not be important to them. So we need to break down the silos and create cross-departmental teams. And this is a critical first step to changing the culture of an organization.
So after you look to break down internal silos, one of the next steps is assessing where your organization is at from a digital maturity standpoint. So for context, digital maturity can be somewhat abstract, but what we're doing here is looking in the mirror to try to assess ourselves, comparing the digital resources that we have and how empowered our internal staff is to execute with that technology. So here's 10 questions you can ask yourself to see where you fall on this scale of digital maturity. Is customer centricity integrated across our business? Are we recruiting new customers and continuing to grow existing customers? Are we using data to drive customer insights? So again, back to one of the principles of digital transformation is listening to our customers or our members. Are we engaging business and marketing leaders as technology decision makers? The CIO of one of the largest customers that we have here at Adage often says there are no more technology projects. There are only business projects that involve a technology system. Are we delivering self-service and simplifying processes? Are we harnessing the latest technology for the next level of efficiency? Are we leveraging digital platforms to reduce delivery timeframes? Are we anticipating and solving customer issues before they become issues? Again, the whole idea of customer obsession. Are we revising our business model to prioritize agility and emerging trends? And finally, are we making customers our business partners?
So the big question is always, how much does this cost? And we'll use a couple of very broad examples. We'll talk about a $100,000 digital transformation and $1 million one. And when we're dealing with a relatively limited budget, we need to focus on addressing the most critical user pain points. We need to demonstrate immediate value. And we do that by focusing on kind of bang for your buck initiatives that are low cost and high impact. And when we talk about a $1 million digital transformation initiative, we need top-down buy-in specifically from leadership. We need to do in-depth discovery and visioning, and we talk about focusing on quick wins which build internal momentum for the initiative. And finally, we need to be agile. And what I mean by that is that things are going to change, and there's going to be changes in priorities, and we need to be able to react to changes and adjust our roadmap accordingly. We start by doing qualitative and qualitative analysis, and this is for any size digital transformation. We need to listen to our users, understand their needs, frustrations, and pain points, and then use analytics and data tools to inform our decisions. We have a process that we call Adage Align here, and you can see it outlined. We develop a core cross-departmental team, strategize, listen to users, and develop representative personas. We need to look at our brand and find points of fragmentation to address, look at our competition, see what they're doing better than us, review analytics and technology platforms and address those needs. And once we do all that, we review our findings and develop core principles for the effort, which will inform our vision. And finally, we develop that roadmap. And as I mentioned, that roadmap is going to change, so we need to be agile.
So if we remember back to our friends Bezos and Jobs, through the process of Adage Align, we are allowing customer insight to shape the technological decisions that we're making. So let's look at an example of a couple projects here. First, for a $100,000 digital transformation project, to give you a sense of the effort that goes into it. So in the example here, we're showcasing, again, the work that we had completed. Here you can see we did 8 strategy workshops with their internal staff members, interviewed 3 of their customers, and were able to map and develop 3 customer or member personas for them. We looked at 2 of the top competitors to examine strengths, weaknesses, and engaging customers, and identified 3 technology systems that could be improved on through the transformation project. Now let's compare that to a $1 million project. Here, we conducted over 100 strategy workshops with staff. This ranged from our day-to-day contacts up to the executive team, and even all the way up further to the board of directors. We spoke with over 150 members during customer interviews and were able to develop 10 personas. Then we examined the 6 of their main competitors and assessed their digital universe, which was made up of over 75 systems, all in their IT department, their sales department, finance, education, publishing, fundraising, and research. So back to the $100,000 project. At this budget, we were able to take a look at Google Analytics to find trends and customer pain points, whereas with a $1 million project, we're able to go beyond Google Analytics and use tools for heat mapping, usability testing, visitor session recordings, again, to find pain points that we can then improve on within the project itself.
You can see here, we used one of these tools to see where people were engaging with the website design, which is on the left screen. And you can see the areas of the site where users were navigating to and clicking on. And once we understood that, we did a simple redesign that didn't take very long, and we have a site now on the right that people are engaging with.
So looking at the digital transformations now from a technology standpoint, what you're seeing here is the $100,000 example. So depending on your organization's size, you may only have a few technology systems that are in place, or again, depending on the budget, there may be only a few that we're able to work and enhance. As you can see here, we took a look at their CRM, or in their case, Salesforce, their public-facing website, and their career center, their job application portal. and making improvements throughout that transformation with them. Now, from $1 million digital transformation project, again, you can see this is more of what the typical digital universe would look like for them. Throughout their different departments, they're using multiple systems. As Jake mentioned before, a lot of times we see organizations that have multiple email platforms. Again, breaking down these types of silos can help us as we move forward with the transformation project, again, tying it back to the end customer or member. And then finally, we're going to compare roadmaps for these transformations. Here you see the $100,000 example. We're mapping out items that we can make the highest impact as quickly as possible. In this example, again, we have the public site, and then down below for phase 2 that was running alongside it was also their member site as well as their e-commerce and CRM solution. And if we compare that to the $1 million transformation project, you can see there's a lot more portions within the digital ecosystem that we're able to touch and enhance, as well as a longer time frame for us to do so. So that kind of gives you a sense of the depth and breadth that we're able to do with these different types of transformations at those price points.
So first we will talk about the American Academy of Pediatrics. They're a large association based in the suburbs of Chicago with an advocacy office in Washington, D.C. 67,000 members, lots of districts, state and local chapters, and national committees. And this is a case where we focused first on quick wins. We spent several months doing user and stakeholder discovery, and our quick wins were things like redesigning the homepage of the site, and that example that I showed a few slides ago. And we rebuilt their e-commerce site, which had previously taken up to 17 clicks to complete a purchase, and we got it down to just a few clicks. And the biggest pain point we heard was users' ability to find the information they were looking for. So we developed an enterprise search application that queried content from 7 different sites into one unified experience. And with that came content strategy, removing duplicate content, properly tagging content so that it would actually be searchable. We took a look at their overall brand and are starting to unify their platforms to reduce brand fragmentation. And the 2 platforms in progress right now are a rebuild of their My Account platform so that members have a single source of truth for their member information. And finally, transcripts, which will allow members to see all their credits in one place and easily send them to the appropriate places with a couple of clicks rather than multiple sources for that information and a manual process of mailing or faxing the transcripts. The next is NCREIF, or the National Council of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries. And as you can see, it's a much smaller organization than the AAP, just a few committees and a dozen or so employees. But we first were able to redevelop their flagship and member websites, which included a rebrand, and then took their analytics platform and query tool, which are primary member benefits, and allows members to create different reports to inform their investment decisions. Previously, this was just loaded into spreadsheets and it was real difficult to use. And now they can develop hundreds of real-time reports for their computer or tablet. It's a huge benefit for why they pay their dues in the first place. So to wrap things up, the key takeaways here are this is not going away, digital transformation. And it's also not one size fits all. We showed different scales of this, but it's all in between those. But we really just need to focus on people and their pain and address those and make their experience easier and make it fun. And finally, the collaboration and agility. We talked about being agile, being able to change as the roadmap changes. So that's collaborating across departmental teams and being able to change on the fly.